Okay, the first time I was in the house was 4 or 5 years ago. Lucille Serrano specifically asked me to come up. She wanted me to meet a gentleman from New York, John Davis, who was a concert pianist, Juilliard graduate. He was interested in the original American music. How did American music come about? And he was in the process then of learning Boone's music, and Lucille thought it was important for John and I to meet, and we met here in this house and walked through it together, and since we have become very good friends. This is kind of the entryway, the stairway. You'll notice, and it's typical of the older houses, the doorways are a lot narrower than they are today. So this is only like a 28-inch doorway or something. Tall ceilings. These are 10-foot ceilings. That's also typical of the 1880s house. And they had these transoms up overhead that would open and vent so it could circulate air. But because the Boone had this incredible memory, what he heard on the wharfs and the docks in St. Louis in 1875, which typically the piano players in the bars and whatnot were usually African Americans. They were usually guys that maybe had been injured on a dock or something, because that was dangerous work, working on the barges and stuff up and down the rivers, moving heavy stuff around. The guys were maimed a lot. Sometimes someone who maybe had a leg crushed or something, he'd wind up being a musician. Those are the kind of people that played in those honky-tonks. And they were creating a lot of music. And Boone heard that. He heard it in 1875. And what he could do was, in 1925, he could play note for note that very piece he'd heard in 1875 in St. Louis. And as far as the blues go, which is kind of my favorite kind of music, although I like all kinds, Ma Rainey is given credit as being the mother of the blues. And she says that she first heard the blues in St. Louis in 1902. So my question is, what did Boone hear in 1875? And according to the pictures I've seen, Boone's Chickering sat here in the middle of this room. There is a photograph of him, piano here, and then there's another piano sitting in the back corner of the parlor room there. This room has the fireplace in it, which of course the gas part's been added in, but we're pretty confident that this part here is all original to the house. And this would have been probably a dining room. The grate in the floor wouldn't have been original. That was added on whenever there was a furnace would have been put there in the crawl space. Otherwise it was heated with this one brick flue that had what they call a thimble, a way to hook a stove up in here, plus the fireplace, and then upstairs there was also places to hook a stovepipe up so you could put stoves upstairs. As you can see, sometime probably through the 60s, after it became a funeral home, the ceiling was dropped. As you can see up through there's probably a dumbwaiter to take things upstairs. It's just too big to be like a heat grate. Some of these old houses had a small grate in the floor to carry heat up, but that's way larger than that would have been. So I'm sure that's probably was a dumbwaiter at some time. All right, this is the stairway, and I really like this. This is pretty unique. It's probably the general design, I'm sure, is from the period it was built. It's a little wobbly like they always are. It's hard to keep these things from being wobbly. And some of the spindles have been knocked out over the years, but this handrail is quite the work of art, man. I've carpentered and been an iron worker and all kind of things, but this had to be soaked for quite a long time to get this to travel. You can see it's in 3 pieces, but even at that, to get this piece to twist and then stay like that, that's pretty neat. And then there's this nice turn in it to get it on up here. This is where the bedrooms would have been. In every census record I find, there's always other people living in the house with the Boones. 1900, I think there was 6 or 7 people that were here in the census. 1910, there's John and Eugenia and a gentleman named John Samuels. Mr. Samuels is said to be a hired employee. He's actually, his occupation is given as cook on that 1910 census. And just recently, a gentleman has contacted me from Florida who is a descendant of John Samuels. And hopefully he'll be here this spring. He told me he has a trip to Afghanistan he has to make, and hopefully he'll get back from that all right. And he plans to be here for our festival this spring.